And what we saw today comes on the heels of some extraordinary reporting that you have in today's paper. Let me read some from your piece. Inside the White House, aides largely retreated to grim silence after Helsinki. Folks are a little freaked out today, a Republican operative in frequent touch with the administration wrote in a text message Tuesday, almost like zombies about how bad this was. Talk about what you discovered. I think you were reporting this out when you were last on this show, but talk about sort of the picture that has come together on what is only the third day of this Helsinki week.
Sure. In talking to a number of aides and also a number of people who are in touch with the White House, there was a sense that for whatever they might say publicly, they knew this was bad. There was, on some level, a kind of radio silence, which is frustrating as a reporter, and also just a sort of resignation. So some people I talked to, you know, when I asked about, well, what were the meetings? What did Bill Shine say? How did things go? They said, look, we knew this was bad. No one needed to tell us just how bad it was. And everyone was kind of trying to figure out how to clean it up. And there were a number of challenges, including the president himself, which they didn't quite understand if he, and I'm referring to the initial Helsinki summit comments, if he even wanted to clean it up or if he wanted to double down. In the end, he wanted to clean it up. Not necessarily so much because he didn't believe what he said, like the negative coverage, and especially the criticism from Republicans. But a final challenge is that the White House communications operation, there's some confusion about just who is in charge and who's running it. Something even like rapid response or something very basic, like getting talking points out to go on television to members of Congress. That didn't happen until hours after Trump's comments next to Putin, when it was really too late to shape the message in those first crucial 24 hours.
There are two nuggets in your story that jump off from the point you just made. One was how rattled the president was by the criticism from someone who often serves as a surrogate, and that's Newt Gingrich. But you also report that Kelly did what one person described as damage control. Some of these people said Kelly urged lawmakers to share their candid opinion about Trump's Helsinki performance, believing that hearing criticism from trusted allies might help the president understand the magnitude of his blunder. So this is extraordinary to me, that the White House chief of staff is greenlighting attacks on the president on television as a method to get through to the president that he, as White House chief of staff, cannot do himself.
Well, 2 points. One, I should say up front, and we did put this in our story, the White House disputed that account, but we heard it from a number of people that we believed it, and we put it in. But as you know, the president is someone who is often more receptive to either criticism. He sort of sees through that filter of the HD lens. And so he will respond to a Fox News host kind of talking to him through the camera, or one of his allies on television, or he sometimes kind of tires of his actual aides, and it is more compelling for him to have a private conversation with someone he trusts. Maybe it's someone who is in a position to speak about politics or the government. Maybe it's a longtime friend who has nothing to do with any of this, no security clearance, but has been successful in business. The president gets inputs in a lot of different ways, and it seems like General Kelly recognized that.
Jeremy Bash, try to put this whole week so far into context for us. It strikes me that, one, this is no way to run a rodeo. And two, on a week where we should have been focused on really dire changes in our foreign policy posture as a country, the distancing of ourselves from the UK and Germany, the personal attacks on Angela Merkel and Theresa May, the cozying up to Vladimir Putin. Those are big shifts in U.S. foreign policy, yet we are on day 3 of talking about the walking back, of the cleaning up, of the walk back to the blunder that they didn't acknowledge for 36 hours, despite the fact that we are no longer getting our news in print newspapers the next morning.
Yeah, I mean, this week really was the culmination of a month of the most dramatic shift in American foreign policy since World War II. It started with that breakup of the alliance over the G7 issues when the president left town and then stabbed our allies in the back. And obviously went to the Singapore summit where he kind of conceded on the fly that we wouldn't be doing military exercises with Kim Jong-un on the Korean Peninsula. And then, of course, we had the NATO summit, which went terribly. And then, of course, the secret summit with Vladimir Putin, which his aides had no idea what the purpose of it was. And to this day, we actually don't know what the real agenda of that meeting was. And I don't think we're going to know until we get some information about what was discussed during that 2-hour one-on-one secret meeting.
Jeremy, do you have any doubt that there is a recording in the possession of the Russians of that meeting?
stand by.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, there may be, it's possible the Russians could have done it because they wanted to hold it over the head of the American president. I think it's certainly possible, and I think any prudent planning would assume that. I don't know if we'll ever hear a recording or see a transcript, but here's the peril of going into that room alone, which is no matter what the Russians say, we can't dispute it. And so even the act, the incompetent act of doing a one-on-one meeting with the United States today is a very detrimental position vis-a-vis one of our most capable adversaries.
And we know that adversary is watching Donald Trump on day 3 of trying to take his foot out of his mouth. Today, and thanks for sharing it with us. When we come back, is Donald Trump seriously